My name's Sam. I'm Frugalissima on Instagram and WordPress, and make a blog post about sewing and all things sewing. And I'm here today to talk about making the best use of your sewing time. So I'm not advocating sewing quickly or rushing with your sewing, just making the best of your time and realising that not everybody has a lot of time to sew. And sometimes it's frustrating when you're spending a lot of time looking for things or making mistakes or whatever because you're rushing. I mentioned in my last video that I was going to sew this pattern, which is the new Look K6351, and I'm just going to make this jacket here. And this was inspired by the jackets that they sewed on the sewing bee when they did the 1980s week. Obviously, that's not a 1980s jacket. I don't really have much use for a big power jacket with shoulder pads in. But I thought, as I was sewing this, as I was thinking of things that speed things along, I would just sort of jump in and give you a few hints and tips. So the very first one is to always wash your fabric and press it as soon as it comes through the door. And I'm speaking from a very, very recent experience here. I always wash all my fabric as soon as it arrives, and there are a lot of people who disagree with me. I just haven't found an argument not to, really, unless it's really delicate fabric, or it's the only fabric I've never washed is, and I'll insert a picture in the editing, is the princess coat that I sewed for Gertie, and I had 5 metres of it was like a wool. And number one, it wouldn't go in my washing machine, and I couldn't cut it up because I didn't know where to cut it. And that coat will probably never go in a washing machine, so there was no reason to do that. But in general, everything gets washed as soon as it comes through the door. And the reason I say I've got recent experience for that, as soon as I wash it, I iron it as well. And that's kind of getting to know your fabric. I think that's quite important, getting to know the drape and feel of it, but also if there's any faults on it. I'm in the process of doing a shirt for a friend of mine, and she ordered some fabric, and I did the same. As soon as it arrived, it went in a washing machine, on the washing line, ironed it. And as soon as I started pressing it, I could see there was a fault in that fabric. So that will have to go back. Luckily, we've got time to sort that out. The reason that's a time saver is that when you've got the drive to sew, when you're wanting to actually decide you're going to make something, it's ready to go. You're not having to say, oh, I'm going to have to wash it, or shall I skip washing it and risk it shrinking? Right. So that's my first top tip. The other one is a bit contrary in that I'm going to say slow down, because, like I said, I'm not advocating rushing your sewing. I love sewing, and I would sew all day, and I enjoy the process of it. But slowing down just gives you headspace. So I always read the instructions of a new pattern, and a lot of people say that they don't bother reading instructions. I don't know why. The instructions on this particular pattern are so brief, there's no reason not to. We've got 11 instructions there, and I just sit and read those while I'm having my breakfast or whatever, and sometimes I make notes as well. And the reason that's a good idea is because I can change the order of things. And changing the order of sewing things does speed things up. And I try to do as much sewing as I can possibly do before I need to do any pressing or any finishing. So that's tip number 3 as well. Putting things together in a batch. So as far as you can with sewing until you've got to press. When you read the instructions, it will tell you to sew one seam, and it doesn't usually tell you to press them, but you do need to do that. So you need to just slow down and think about when you're going to do things. So the next tip is having everything prepared, and that includes if you've got any hand sewing. Make sure your needle's going to be threaded before you start. Have everything to hand. I'm going to be using bias binding on that, so I made a load of bias binding last night. I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to use a hook and eye on this particular jacket. There's no buttonhole in it, but I've got some rather ancient. I don't know how old these are. Look at these. So options for hooks and eyes. So they're all prepped, and I've already cut my fabric. I did all that last night, and I've done the interfacing as well. So all my pieces are interfaced and prepped, and that probably took me about half an hour last night to get it all cut out and prepped. Tip number 5 would be when you're cutting your fabric, cut your fabric right sides together. That just means that if you're going to sew 2 seams together, they're already there. So you don't even have to take them apart and pin them together again. And this is a classic example. 2 backs are sewn together, right sides together, and before I even lifted these off the table, I just pinned them. It's just an extra job not to have to do. So that's all pinned and ready to go. And as soon as I've interfaced my facings, they're all pinned and ready to go. So my next tip would be to have all your sewing area ready and prepared. So I've got my serger is all set up on the colour that I need, and my sewing machine's all set up ready to go with a full bobbin. Don't forget to fill your bobbins, and have a spare one going on the go as well, so that when you run out of thread, you're not having to refill your bobbin. And that as an added bonus, in that you know that you've probably got enough thread to do the project. There's nothing worse than getting halfway through a project, particularly in these times now where you can't run out to the shops. You might have to wait until you can buy something online. And just make sure that everything's set up efficiently. So I'll insert a picture of how I've got it set up. So I've got my sewing machine next to my serger, and I've got my ironing board nearby. The table that I'm sat at here is a dining table, and I usually come and do any pinning or anything like that. And I realise not everybody can do this. I don't have a separate sewing room. I have to sew in the dining room. This is a table that we eat all our meals off, so this needs to be cleared at the end of my sewing session. But it doesn't.
So there's my sewing machine next door to my serger, which is all set up with the correct threads, and nearby is the ironing board with the iron, and they are all set together very much like a work triangle, and all my tools are to hand on a board in front of me, all the ones that I use most frequently, and down there is interfacing that I use most frequently as well. And bonus tip here is a wheelie chair. If you've got a hard floor, these are ideal for whizzing about.
So typical librarian, I know where everything is. If you can see these boxes there, they're not labelled, but I know there's bias binding and elastic, and I know, and ribbons and what have you. I know where everything is, and keeping my scissors and all my cutting tools and any kind of tools like that all to hand all helps. Next top tip is to use a timer. Now you might think, what's she on about using a timer? I use the Fly Lady system for cleaning, and a timer is something that they use to get yourself to get jobs done. And you might think, oh, that's just putting yourself under pressure. It's not. It's more a case of allocating time to do something. So for me, and other people might have obviously got different circumstances, but say for example, you've got children at home, or you're just really struggling to find time. If you say to your family, right, then this next hour is mine, and it's mine alone for sewing, and I'm just putting the timer on, and it's amazing how much you can get done if you've just got an hour undisturbed. And that comes on to my next top tip, is switch off your phone, put it in a different room, switch off your computer, YouTube, anything like that. There was a sewing tag going on a couple of years ago about what do you listen to when you're sewing, and I don't know I think what the percentage was, but quite a lot of people have YouTube or something going on, and I can understand that. I have started doing that a little bit, but it is quite distracting. And if you get an email in, you start answering their email, and you're not just concentrating. If you just put that timer on for an hour, and you just get cracking on, it's amazing how much you can get done. And my next top tip is make yourself a right big cup of tea. Yeah, I can't work without tea. So get yourself a cup of tea. Get everything prepped. Everything's all ready to go. And I'm going to make a start now on actually sewing. I'm going to put a camera on slow mo, and we'll see how much I can get done in an hour. So just once again, I'm making this new Look K6351, the jacket here. And I'm just trying to see how much I can get done. I won't get it finished in an hour. But my timer only goes for an hour at a time, so we'll see what we can get done for an hour. I've missed one top tip. Always make a toile. I'm sorry, I'm a massive advocate of making toiles. There's certain things you probably don't need to, but something like a fitted jacket, and I mentioned this in my last video. It's a good job I did, because it's too small, so I need to go up a size. But it just gets you to know the process of certain things. I've understitched this on the wrong side, so I know now when I go back to it that I can understitch it on the right side, and I won't have to unpick. It's some tips are contrary to what you think. You think, oh, you're spending time making a toile, and yes, this toile did take me 2 hours, so you could add that to your sewing time. But there's nothing worse than unpicking, really. And unpicking is another top tip. Make sure your unpicker is sharp, because that really does slow you down. And it's the most infuriating if you've got a blunt unpicker or quick unpick or whatever you want to call it. The most infuriating if it's blunt and you rip your fabric. We've all been there. So I'm now going to stop this one, and we'll go on to my slow moment. Okay, so I'm back now from, I've just done, hopefully you'll be able to see the slow motion that I've videoed, and I've just done an hour and I think it was 7 or 8 minutes, and I've got something that I can try on. It's not finished, that I can try on. So if you really, really, really don't want to make a toile, you know that sort of an hour's sewing, you can perhaps have something to try on. And this is so far, I've done quite a bit of finishing as well, so just stand up. So we've still got the bottom to finish, and the facings to put in. All the insides are finished apart from this back seam here, and I'm going to bind that back seam, because that's the one that's going to be seen. And I'm also going to bind the hem and all around the facing and that back seam. So that's going to take me quite a while to do. So just as I've been sewing, I've just thought of a couple of other things as I've been sewing. Number one is to make yourself comfortable for sewing. So you can see now my hair's tied back. I can't bear my hair being in my face whilst I'm sewing. Just make sure whatever you're wearing is nice and comfortable, and you can move freely in it. You're not getting tied up in yourself and what have you. And the next one is scissors around your neck. This is great until you decide, you forget about them and you go to the toilet. So just having these snips around my neck, just at the right length, just so that I can snip whilst I'm at the machine, and I'm not putting them down on the table and walking away and what have you. It saves an awful lot of time not having to look for these. The other one is your machine might default, like mine does, to quite a short stitch, 2.2 mine. I always put it up to 2.6. I don't think it makes your sewing any faster particularly, but boy does it make unpicking a little bit easier if you do make a mistake. It just makes it a little bit easier, and it makes no difference to your seams at all. It's a marky pattern pieces clearly. Now I thought I've done quite a good job of marking my pattern pieces, but for some reason I didn't get the double notches in the back of my sleeve, so both had a single notch and I couldn't tell which was back or front. So that put an extra bit of 5 minutes faffing about trying to work out which was which. So yeah, just if you've got fabric like this, you just cannot tell the right side from the wrong side. Just clearly, that was all clearly marked. It was just my sleeves that wasn't very clearly marked. One other thing that I forgot to do whilst we live and learn, don't we? You know, nobody's perfect, but I just thought I'd mention it. I forgot to put my gathering stitches in the sleeves before I sewed the sleeves together up this seam here, and it's just a lot fiddlier. You can do it, but it's a lot easier to do it when it's flat, and it's also a lot easier to finish that sleeve, which I did remember to do. Finish this sleeve off whilst it's flat. And press it up whilst it's flat. These two seams might not meet exactly, but it just saves you burning your fingers when you're trying to do it. These are going to be hand stitched, so that again is going to take a little bit more time. So yeah, I'm going to go on to the bias binding. That's probably going to take me about an hour. So I'm an hour in, so that's obviously an extra step. I could just shove this straight through the overlocker and it'll take me 5 minutes, but I don't want to do that. I want the finish of it to be nice, so that I'm not conscious when I'm taking my jacket on and off. So you would have that serge seam on show, and I want it to be bias bound, and also this back seam here. I don't want that to be serged, like overlocked or whatever you call it. I want it to be nice and professionally done, hopefully. Okay, so that's it for now, and I'll be back in about an hour after I've put my bias binding on. Right, so that little session took me just over an hour. I finished all the bias binding now, which I reset it after an hour. So I think it took me an hour and 15, an hour and 10, I think. So I've just got now to attach my facing and to hand stitch the hem. So the bias binding's all on here and on here, facing to attach. So I will do that, do the pinning and attach that and come back. Right then, so there we have it. The jacket's finished, and I've just got 19 minutes 39 seconds left out of the 4 hours. Again, I'm not doing this to quickly sew something. I'm just trying to show you some practices, make you more efficient at sewing. It's also inspired by my latest video about the Great British Sewing Bee 80s week, where they sewed a jacket, and I think they took 4 hours to do that. I'll double check and put it on the screen. So I did kind of think to myself, I can't sew a jacket in 4 hours, Now this isn't a wool jacket, it's made this out of a linen, but apart from not having the shoulder pads and a button and buttonhole, because this isn't designed to cross over enough to have a button and buttonhole, it's supposed to have a hook and eye, and I wouldn't wear it. They look a bit naff, I think, so I didn't put that on. And obviously I had already cut out my fabric, which took me about half an hour. So can make a jacket in 4 hours, as it turns out. So we've got it's all bound on there, on the inside, down there. I might just go back in and sew and secure that down there to stop that seam showing. I might just do that. Put my label in, made in Yorkshire. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So I hope that's given you a few hints and tips, just to give you a few more ideas about how to make your sewing efficient. The other thing about with the timer is I have done this sort of more or less continuously, apart from I stopped for lunch and took a break for lunch. And that is another thing, is sometimes you can be at it all day and you don't seem to be getting any quicker with things. So I would just say take a break. If you're hungry, take a break and go do something else. Especially if you're getting frustrated. Sometimes it's better to walk away and come back again. Forgot to say, my phone stopped recording right at the end of the hand sewing. So you're just going to have to take my word for it, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. My battery ran out. Never mind. But yeah, I hope you all got something of value from that. And leave me some comments below if what you do to be a bit more efficient at sewing. If you don't mind just clicking subscribe, and the little bell will tell you when I'm making any new videos. I am currently sort of doing the reviews of the Great British Sewing Bee, and that's how I started 4 or 5 weeks ago. But hopefully I'll be able to bring some more content that's a little bit more useful for you as well. Okay then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.